Alistair stands before the study in a fresh set of clothing, but looks very much restless with grey rings beneath his eyes as the Idrisian guards step in and out of the room, speaking to the servants. A man about half a decade senior to Alistair in the Idris military uniform approaches with a pair of dull grey eyes that cuts through his flesh and bones, staring into his mind. He begins, Lord Alistair, I'd like for you to run through what happened the night before again. Investigator Corrin, I had already done so numerous times. Just procedure, Lord Alistair. The noble sighs and nods. Very well, then. My father was drinking heavily. We had a discussion and he takes a deep breath before continuing. He fell and hit his head on his desk. I rushed over and tried to help him, but he was already losing too much blood. The servants mentioned that they had heard yelling between the two of you inside the study. Yes, it was a heated discussion. Political affairs, and I might have brought up my brother, Edlin. We had an argument. Truth is, my father has not been well since the death of my mother. Less so when my brother died. Alcohol and grief dull the mind. True. At the moment, this seems nothing more than an unfortunate accident. We will know more once we inspect your father's body in detail. Corrin glares at Alistair with a cold and unflinching expression. Unable to detect whether the investigator believes him, an invisible force overtakes the young noble as the two men stand there quietly. Sweat slides down his head and his throat grows tight enough to stop his breathing, while a burning sensation swells up from his back to his neck and his arms freeze in bitter cold. A familiar voice releases Alistair from the grips of fear as two men look at Grandmaster Ilarion as he approaches. Alistair, are you all right? Ilarion rushes over and asks. Alistair nods, embracing the Grandmaster. Yes, I just... Hush, it is all right. Ilarion turns to the investigator and Corrin returns the empty gaze. What is the meaning of this, Corrin? I'm simply asking our Lord Alistair some standard questions is all. This is not an appropriate time, investigator. Ilarion releases Alistair and the young noble takes a step back. He has just lost his father. I understand, but we must verify the cause of his death. Alden was a heavy drinker, and had he not been in the best of mind with the death of his wife and his child, I doubt Alistair of all people would be responsible for this. We are only trying to be thorough, Grandmaster. Enough, investigator. Let him grieve. This is a matter for the enforcers, not the Order, Grandmaster. You do not have authority here, Corrin insists with a cold gaze. I am a part of the Council of Idris, Investigator Corrin, Ilarion repeats in a stern tone. Let him grieve. You can ask your questions at another time. He stands between Corrin and Alistair, casting an imposing shadow over the investigator, but his face remains as devoid of emotion as before. Very well, Corrin replies and then walks off. The Grandmaster turns back to Alistair and lightly embraces him again. My condolences, Alistair. Speak of it no more, Grandmaster. Right, of course. Would you like to stay with me for a while, or would it be... No, I would rather stay here. I wish to stay close, and there are still matters of the inheritance to settle. Right, of course. At least step out for now and go somewhere more settled. Alistair nods and allows the Grandmaster to guide him out of his mansion. His eyes for a brief moment turn back, and his fist tightens as he proceeds onward. Alistair's eyes open, gazing up at the roof of his bed, exhausted with a hammer pounding on his forehead. His voice caught in his throat as he attempts to call the servants beyond his bedroom door. 17th through the 18th of Red Sun, AC, year 1833, Orisea, Valoris, Idris. The bed beneath him feels disgusting and wet as it sucks in his body like a quicksand of flesh and meat drenched in sweat. His bed sheets cling to him like cobs of spiderwebs, and the young noble finds it almost painful to rip himself off the bed as his bones creak like rusted old gears in a cloak. Water, he screams with sandpaper in his throat. The servants open the door, and one among them brings a glass of water to Alistair's aid. He snatches it, and all the content inside the cup vanishes in an instant between the noble's chipped and cracked lips. He presses his fingers over his eyes as he shakes his head, with a sick feeling squirming up and down his throat. Bring me something stronger. Like what, my lord? Anything. Just anything, Alistair whispers through his broken lips. Yes, my lord. The servant exits the room, leaving Alistair sitting alone in his bed. His eyes wander aimlessly across the floor, looking at everything yet taking in nothing as his mind is bombarded by countless broken thoughts. His fingers hang tightly onto the side of his bed as he feels the tension creeping up his body, locking in his muscle with tightness, binding knots. Alistair closes his eyes and eases his grip on the bed to try to loosen himself up. The servant returns with a cup and hands it over to Alistair. "Bring me the bottle," Alistair whispers as he takes the cup. "Yes, my lord." The content of the cup flows quickly in between Alistair's lips, and he gazes out the window. The moon that shines in the air casts its rays upon the towers of Idris, yet its shines appears both dull and flat. He removes himself from his bed and proceeds towards the door as the servant returns with the bottle. The young noble walks by and waves his hand nonchalantly. The servant acknowledges the command and departs with the bottle in hand. Alistair stands before the study that once belonged to his father and stares at the floor that was once covered with his blood only days before. Now cleared, as if not a thing had transpired. He places himself into the seat and leans against the soft cushion on his back, and the spine curves to match it. His shoulder slumps in like a rock pressed against a sponge, and yet his body still hurts from the inside, with cold steel needles piercing through his bones like the ache of a witch's curse. After giving his arms a light rub, his hand reaches for his father's pen, his inkwell, and the rolls of parchment. The candle is lit, and his work begins. The light of the sun penetrates the glass window and spills into the study, gradually replacing the light of the candle, and yet Alistair takes no notice of it. The pain in his body had long since faded as he dives into his work and prepares for the days ahead. A knock pulls him out of his focus, and the young Carlyle looks at the door with a sudden, tired, and vacant eyes. "What is it?" he asks. "My lord, Grandmaster Ilarion is here to see you." "What? Is the Grandmaster not visiting during the afternoon?" "It is the afternoon, my lord." "It is?" He twists his neck back behind him and sees that the sun had gone beyond the side of his window and now hangs high directly above the estate. "So it is." The young Carlyle rubs his forehead and replies, "Let him in, then." "Yes, my lord," the servant answers and exits. Alistair leans against the back of his chair with his elbow pressed against the armrest to support his tilted, heavy head. He clears his throat and then sits up and straightens his clothing and hair. The Grandmaster enters momentarily, guided by the servant, and the old exorcist takes a seat before the desk. He clears his throat before speaking. "Alistair, how are you doing?" The noble let out a long sigh before dipping his head back into a tilted pose. "Not too well. I haven't been sleeping." He rubs his eyes that feel as hot as boiling water. "Are you certain you wish to jump so quickly back into work?" the Grandmaster asks as he scans through the parchment. "Work is the only time when I feel like myself again, and there really is too much to do. I cannot be wasting time grieving." "Grieving is not a waste of time, Alistair. I've learned that the hard way." Alistair shakes his head with a weary smile. "No worries, Grandmaster. I am well. Shall we move on to more official business, then?" After a pause, the Grandmaster nods. "Right. I brought over the documents myself. I know you do not want to make a spectacle of the matter." The young Carlyle gives his approval as Ilarion rustles through his possessions, from it pulling out a stack of parchments neatly rolled up, bounded by string. He loosens the binding and unrolls it before Alistair. He carefully takes it with an ounce of energy pouring back into him, spends a good hour reading through every word carefully before nodding with satisfaction. Everything appears to be in order. "It should be. I read through it all personally before I brought it here." Alistair dips his pen in ink and signs his full name on the bottom. The Grandmaster smiles as he signs, then takes the parchments back. "From this day forth, Alistair Preston Carlyle, you are the lord of the Carlyle family, and all that is here is now officially yours," he announces, raising his arms. The two men stand and shake each other's hands in a formal gesture before the Grandmaster lightly taps Alistair's shoulder and says as he gazes into the young noble's weary eyes, "He would be proud to see you now." "Maybe not so much with the bags underneath my eyes," Alistair remarks with a smile. "Nonsense, you look just like Alden when he became the head of the family, bags and all." The two exchange a good laugh. Alistair moves beyond his desk and embraces the old Grandmaster. Ilarion appears taken aback, but returns it with a warm smile. "So, now that you are lord of the Carlyle family, Say no more, Grandmaster. The ambassador is to plead his case again tomorrow, yes? Yes. I wish to state that I have no intention of holding back any support to the capital, financially or otherwise. With my vote, the council is certain to vote in the ambassador's favor as well, and then we may begin organizing a campaign to the capital. Good. It is long overdue. All right. I best get out of your way and let you return to your work. Thank you, Grandmaster. Take care of yourself. You as well, Alistair. The two embraces again before Illyrian takes his leave. Alistair returns to his desk while a servant guides the Grandmaster to the door. The young noble takes up his pen again, and after a few seconds of pause, he pulls open one of the drawers on his father's desk and holds up his father's letter. He removes another parchment from his desk and places it over the letter, then traces as many individual alphabets as he can before approaching one of the lit candles at the corner of the room. He stares at the flame as it flickers about and holds the letter up close with a trembling grip. With a deep breath, he thrusts it into the fire, and the parchment gradually turns black as ash. 18th of Red Sun AC, year 1833, Orisea, Valoris Idris. The sound of the fountain and the calls of the dove fills his ear again. His eyes open to the warm and gentle embrace of the sun in the estate's garden, surrounded by 4 walls of hedges. To his right sits Alden, as he feeds the doves crumbs of bread, while Alistair looks on with weary eyes. In a calm voice, the elder Carlyle turns to his son. Alistair, do you remember what it is I have always told you and your brother? Alistair stares into his father's face, taking in every line of wrinkles as he mutters the same words as his father. Those with power are only meant to serve those without. Yes, Alden nods and continues. Remember that, and you can do no wrong, he smiles. The two sit on their bench, staring at the dove as they pick off bits of bread from between blades of grass. Alistair's eyes open again to the ceiling of his study. The moon still lingers in the night sky, and the pound on his head continues, but at the very least, for a few hours it appears he's slept. The young Carlyle works through the rest of the night until the morning again, drafting ledgers and counting the coins as he prepares the proper funding for the order's upcoming campaign. When the afternoon comes around, a servant knocks on the wooden door of his study and announces, Lord Alistair, Grandmaster Illyrian is here to see you. Again? What for? I had not asked. Shall I inquire first? Alistair shakes his head. No, bring him in. Yes, my lord, the servant replies and retreats. A few moments later, he returns with the Grandmaster behind him, looking quite visibly annoyed as he takes his seat. The noble dismisses his servant, then looks at the disgruntled old exorcist curiously. I certainly wasn't expecting you to return so quickly, Grandmaster. I had only just started drafting the campaign funds. That is unnecessary, Alistair. Shall I take a guess? The council still denied the ambassador his request. Illyrian nods. I thought my vote would persuade them, but apparently I did too good of a job convincing them otherwise. Alistair stares as the Grandmaster delivers the news, but rather than feeling upset or disappointed, he feels devoid of emotion, much to his own surprise and distress. He finally replies, I see. Well, I'm not surprised. Idris has nothing to lose if they do not get involved, but plenty if they do. That is, if their belief is that the Vizians do not pose a threat. It is not as if I am not confident in the capital's ability to defend itself either, but I feel that there is something amiss here. I agree, but if you cannot change the council's mind, then I think Cornelith arrived at the same conclusion as well. He's finally given up and started preparing for the trip home. But at least he will not be going empty-handed. We reached a compromise of sorts. The council agrees to send off members of the church to Dallas Ty along with additional resources to relieve their refugee crisis. It is something, at least. I will assist and allocate some of my own as well. Thank you, Alistair. Here's a copy of the compromise. Illyrian hands him a folded piece of note, and the young noble takes it, scanning through the details. Sorry for suddenly dropping by like this. Alistair looking up from the note. Oh, no, you are welcome at any time, Grandmaster. Illyrian smiles and leaves his seat. I'll be seeing you then, Alistair. The young Carlyle smiles and nods as an informal farewell. Illyrian turns and begins leaving as Alistair stares curiously at the compromise with his fingers tapping against the note. Grandmaster, one last thing. He turns around. What is it? Who is leading the caravan? I believe Father Decorus has volunteered. Thank you. That is it, Alistair replies with gratitude. Illyrian nods and takes his exit again, leaving Alistair on his own. He listens closely for the Grandmaster's departure before standing up and tucking the compromise into his jacket. He lifts himself from his chair and his legs seem to snap together from the ankle to his knee. He moves towards the door and calls to the servants in the hallway beyond. Prepare me a bath. With hair straightened and clothing fresh, Alistair steps out of the estate and looks at the dazzling afternoon sun. His mind is still somewhat lost in thoughts, but he tries and focuses on the thoughts before him until the carriage arrives. Arianor Cathedral, he informs the driver, and then climbs in. The carriage moves down the road at a steady pace, and Alistair gazes out the window at the laborers and farmers hauling their harvest into the city, and merchants lining their stalls with goods. Harold waves parchment around, crying the morning news, as it does daily, about the wars to the west between the Valerians and the Vizians of Caldenar, but more importantly, the decision of the council to deny Ambassador Cornelith once again. Housewives begin their morning stews, and chimneys smell of roasted hens, and baked bread fills with sweet with cinnamon. The carriage arrives before the massive cathedral of winter-white bricks and lovingly hand-carved pillars, marble statues, and all. The beautiful stained glass window that refracts the light of the sun to a multitude of colors like a rainbow upon the ground before the cathedral, depicting an image of the goddess holding the world at her breast like a loving mother. The carriage door opens, and the young noble steps out before the light of the door. He steps through it, and the refracted light blankets him in the shadows of purple, yellow, green, and red until he passes it and enters through the large wooden door of the cathedral. An old priest walks before Alistair, and the two exchange a formal bow. May the goddess bless your soul, Lord Alistair, the priest greets. May the goddess guard your father? How may I help you? I'm here to see Father Decorus. He's in his afternoon prayers. Then I shall wait. Very well. Right this way, please. The priest guides him to the benches at the front. Take a seat here. I will inform Father Decorus after he's finished. Thank you, Father. The priest smiles and bows before walking away to one of the side doors near the aisles. Alistair looks up at the statue of the goddess before him, who, with raised arms, held upon her palm the world upon which they live. Her eyes remain closed, and her elegant dress folds around her like a rose upon which she emerges from the center, with long flowing hair down to her waist, and a slender figure that is nothing short of perfection upon those smooth-looking marble stones, reflecting the light behind her, casting a shadow upon the entire church. He quietly admires the craftsmanship, as he always did when he came here a long time ago, during a time when his family was whole. The stoic, calm, and firm footsteps from his elder brother, the giggling of the young nobleman's daughters whenever he enters with his gallant white suit laced with golden pins, but little did they know that young Edlin Ramus Carlyle possessed little love for the suit and wanted nothing more than to rip himself free of it and return to the rambunctious lad that he was. But even then, both of them genuinely loved the church, for their mother loved it. If not for her devotion to the goddess, then to the songs that seemed always flowing ceaselessly throughout the cathedral, or burning incense that always smells of fresh timbers or a basket of newly picked fruit. Even now, that same song and smell still linger in the air. The young noble's eyes close as the smells enters his body, fills him with the memories of the past. The days when his mother would quietly pray before the statue, even when she was ill. The doctor would warn her against leaving the mansion, but she would not be held away from this place by anyone. Every time she would leave, unbeknownst to either his father or her doctors, she would bring along her two boys, and every time they find her here, she would turn them with a simple saying, I am in no danger. My two knights are here to protect me after all. But in the end, her knights did fail. Alistair, I want to apologize. Apologize? What for? A young Alistair asks as he turns to his brother, standing all tall over the coffin of their mother inside the family crypt. I must burden you with a fate that you've never asked for. What is it, Edlin? I cannot say. Not an Idris. I cannot be father's heir. We both know that. Between the two of us, you've always been the better one. That's rubbish, Edlin. But are you planning to leave? Yes, I'm headed for Dallas Tie tomorrow morning, and I wish to enlist. I feel perhaps I have responsibilities beyond this place. I can't stay, and I can't be the heir. I understand, Edlin. I do. I will watch over Father, I promise. Please stay safe. No worries. I'll most likely be stationed in some boring old fort looking for bandits anyway. The two snicker at each other. When do you plan to leave? Alistair asks. Tonight, if I can. I'd rather Father not find out. I see. Perhaps when you become lord of the Carlisle family, I will become a captain or even a general. Would that not make Mom proud? Mom was already proud of you, Edlin. You were her knight. Alistair. We are her knights. You just use pens and coins rather than an actual sword. Alistair's lips curl into a witty smile. Swords and armor look much more dashing than coins and pens, Edlin, which is rather unfair since too many daughters already gush over you aplenty. Edlin's laugh echoes through the aisles of the crypt in reply. The real good ladies are the ones that value this, Alistair. He taps his forehead. And you got me beat there. The two shares another laugh and moves through the crypt to the gardens above before silently embracing one another. I'll write you, Alistair. Okay, but you best improve your penmanship. Madame Locke was not making a jest when she said that your letters look more like elven runes, and I do not plan on straining myself trying to read it. All right, little brother. It's a deal. The two exchange hands before a call of his name awakened Alistair from his sweet memories. He gazes up at the elderly priest with a round, wrinkled face and short white hair. His clothing, black with blue trims and loose like the other priests, and in his hands a holy tome. Lord Alistair, by what of the goddess's grace brought you here before me in these halls? Good afternoon, Father Decorus. Pardon my intrusion upon your afternoon prayers. Alistair lifts himself up to meet the priest's eyes. Father Decorus waves his open hand at Alistair as he shakes his head. Not at all. It is quite all right. The young Carlisle gestures down the aisles. Care to take a walk with me? Why, yes, thank you, Lord Alistair. I've been wanting to walk the afternoon light. Prayers are good, but there is nothing better than taking in the day's warmth and watching the hard-working men and women carry on their tasks. Agreed. Father Decorus and the young noble make their way out of the cathedral, steadily pacing themselves down the city streets. So, Father Decorus, I heard that you've been chosen to lead the relief effort to Dallas Tie. Not chosen, volunteered. These bones of mine are not quite done yet. I've been wanting Idris to take action, if I'm being honest, even if it means sending men off to war. It is our civic duty to serve the Queen as much as it is our moral one to assist the refugees, whether they be survivors of the Vizian's regime or the victims of war. And yet most of the council disagree. They don't see Dallas Tie as our sovereign capital. They claim Idris as an independent kingdom. Rubbish. We are inside the boundaries of Valeris, are we not? And who do the Valerians owe their allegiance to if not for Dallas Tie and her queen? I wholeheartedly agree, but the council has made their decision, and it does not seem like Grandmaster Ilarion can change their mind. The priest shakes his head, expressing his disappointment. Father Decorus, I have a request, if I may. Of course, speak your mind, Lord Alistair. I wish to take part in the caravan to Dallas Tie. I want to assist the relief effort. Well, by all means, then come along. We could use the help. Yes, but I fear there are several things that may keep me from coming along. For one, Grandmaster Ilarion might deny me my request in fear of my safety. For another, Investigator Corrin still has not cleared me from my father's death. Oh, I see. Goddess keeps his soul. Indeed. I have hoped that you could request my presence directly to the cardinals. I have a great deal of respect for your family, Lord Alistair. Your father, your brother, and especially your mother. She was a devout woman and an amazing young woman, but your father became a different man when she died. Even more so when your brother left. Even more when he fell in battle. Yes, I could never imagine my father departing so abruptly. There are dark places in every man's soul. You speak true, then, Lord Alistair. You have naught to do with your father's death. I am only a witness, Father Decorus, nothing more. Very well, the priest nods and then continues. Did you know that your father funded several expansions to the cathedral? Most of it to impress your mother when they were still young, but it was a contribution nonetheless, and we welcomed it. But when your mother died... Alistair quickly grasps the priest's request and finishes his sentence. His contribution has ceased. Yes, a shame. I will not mince words. You are the bright sort, Lord Alistair. We are a church, and we have no income other than whatever the people can spare. All I ask is a handful of coins from you, and I will ensure that neither Investigator Corn nor the Grand Masters of the Orders can stop you from leaving. Very well. I will have my servants bring a sizable contribution. I estimate 10,000 gold coins would suffice. Plenty, Lord Alistair. Thank you for your generous donation. You are welcome, Father Decorus. Shall we be returning, then? Yes, let us. They return to the cathedral and exchange a formal farewell. Alistair calls for his carriage and enters, then begins his journey home. Father Decorus remains outside the cathedral's steps, waving goodbye to the young noble as he departs. As the carriage moves toward the estate, the young Carlyle slumps in his seat and sighs, rubbing his eyes gently with his fingers. 24th of the Red Sun, AC, year 1833, Oricea, Valoris Idris. Alistair looks down across the vast gardens of the estate with the sun shining upon him, looking at the walls of hedge that makes up the maze where he spent his childhood playing games with his brother, or enjoying afternoon tea as his mother reads to them the tales of the past such as King Roden and the Dragon of the Void, or the Nine Sages. But deep inside the garden, beyond the hedges, the crypt of the Carlyle family holds the body of his mother, father, and brother, leaving only Alistair as the Carlyle. A servant approaches the young noble on the balcony. My lord, Grandmaster Larian is here to see you. Let him in, Alistair answers, keeping his eyes on the garden. The Grandmaster's footsteps stop at the edge right before the door to the balcony, but he stands not alone. Another stands closely behind him, a woman with a peach-colored hair with the strands in front tied up to prevent it from shrouding her face, wearing the female military uniform adorned by the members of the order. An exorcist, and to confirm Alistair's hypothesis, she carries a short katana in a black sheath by her waist, and most likely possesses additional weapons hidden in those white uniforms, with loose-looking sleeves and robes that flow down to the back of her knee. The old Grandmaster steps into the balcony and makes a formal nod at Alistair while possessing a grim and sour expression to which the young noble knows what most likely is the cause. Grandmaster Ilarion, thank you for this pleasant visit. Please take a seat. Ilarion quietly accepts and gestures for the young woman to wait by the door before sitting down on one of the luxurious chairs across Alistair. A nearby servant approaches and pours a brownish tea out of the kettle into an empty cup beside Ilarion, and he takes a quick sip before speaking. It appears Father Decorus requires you in his expedition to Dallas Ty to oversee resource management and allocation, as he phrases it. Sorry, Grandmaster, but I will not accomplish much in Idris, and I knew you would not approve. Alistair finally looks at the Grandmaster and then takes a seat. Ilarion's sour expression dissolves, and he returns a burdensome smile. Clearly, I do not have a choice. I cannot keep you from going, but I am concerned, Alistair. You've never left Idris on your own before. Because Father never gave me a chance to walk on my own 2 feet, Alistair retorts. Alden is not perfect, and the goddess keeps his soul, but you are the last Carlyle. I'm just concerned for you and your family's name. Your name means something, boy. Even in Aricania, the Carlyle name means something. Grandmaster, I will not be alone. I know. I cannot emphasize enough that I just wish for you to remain safe. I will be. I will not go beyond the walls of the capital. Only assisting with the relief effort is all. The noble presents a reassuring smile. The Grandmaster opens his mouth to speak out, but considers his words for a few more seconds before replying. If I keep going, I'll just keep repeating myself, so I will leave things here. Ilarion takes a long step from his cup. I promise you I will stay safe and I will stay out of trouble. I'm sure you will, but just in case. Ilarion signals for the female exorcist to enter. This is Cheryl Mayland. She is one of the best. Grandmaster Ilarion, I do not need a bodyguard, the young noble insists. Alistair, I may not be able to stop you from leaving, but you cannot make her leave either, so this is about as good as a compromise as we will reach. Alistair stares at the exorcist, who returns a blank and vacant gaze before turning back to Ilarion. The young noble nods, having no choice, complies. Very well, I'll take Cheryl with me. Good. Take care of yourself, my boy. Ilarion steps up, embracing Alistair. The young noble gazes past the Grandmaster's shoulder and out into the surrounding garden. Ilarion releases his hold and taps Alistair's shoulder. I'll be seeing you sometime in the future. Yes, you too, Grandmaster. He nods and takes his leave through the balcony door, and Alistair gazes at Cheryl, who remains unmoved from her last position like a statue rather than a person. Even her breath is hushed and subtle with a barely moving chest. Cheryl, would you care to tell me about yourself? Alistair awkwardly asks. What would you like to know? She asks stoically. What is your job in the Order exactly? Protect clients from demonic threats or otherwise, if a person has become subject of demonic possession, or the Order has reasons to believe that someone is responsible for the usage of magic with demonic origins or summoning of demons, then it is my task to eliminate them. So, you're an assassin? Of sorts. I see. Perhaps it is the emptiness in the exorcist's eye, but the young noble feels a great deal of discomfort in her presence. So much so that it is almost suffocating, even within his open balcony, and now he must endure a possibly month-long journey with her eyes gazing at his every move. We'll be leaving tomorrow at dawn. Do you have all your items prepared? Yes, I have already made all the necessary preparations. I see. Alistair turns away and walks into the mansion, and just as Cheryl begins to follow, he holds up his hand out to stop her. I will be inside the manor. I will not require protection. Pardon me, Lord Alistair, but did your father not die inside the manor? Do not speak of my father, and I do not need protection in my own home. Very well, as you wish, my lord. He walks into the mansion, and he can see at the corner of his eyes that the exorcist remains standing like a statue right outside, with her gaze firmly affixed on him. With silent frustration, Alistair's pace hastens away from her sight. He walks into his study, dropping into his seat, and feeling empty in his body as all desires to think and move drains out of him. He gazes over his desk and goes through the list of items he requires for the journey, checking them mentally again and ensuring that all of his preparations have been made. His thoughts tangle up as he feels a mixture of anxiety and eagerness, waiting for the start of his journey tomorrow, but also a sense of hesitancy. A feeling not driven by a sense of indecision, but one that is quite the opposite instead, as he searches for his feelings, wondering about his purpose in the capital. The foremost is certainly to fulfill his duty to Father Decorus and assist the capital in the refugee crisis. But then what should the young noble do? A desire to experience the court of the Queen and seize the capital on his own fills him with bits of excitement, but also a sense of guilt as he acts like a sightseer while a war is being fought miles away. His vision and purpose for this journey seem muddled as many opportunities could present themselves, but there is only one last part that troubles him as he recalls the day his father died in this study. What Alistair said to his father, his desire to avenge Edlin. He had not lied when he said that he desired to avenge him, but it just seems like a fantasy, as he is neither a soldier nor a fighter, and the Idris Council has already made their decision not to assist the capital. The young noble leaves his chair and opens a bottle, chugging it as too many feelings flood his mind. A sense of helplessness, a child's foolish desire, an ambition like a wildfire, untamed, uncontrolled, spreading across his thoughts until it burns his mind down, but at least for the moment, there's only one path Alistair needs to take. The one that shall lead him to the capital. Whatever his desire may be when he reaches it, perhaps the gods will grant him mercy and show him his destiny. A servant approaches the door and knocks on it. Yes, he gazes at the servant. My lord, Investigator Corrin is here to see you. The noble looks neither fazed nor surprised as he nods to the servant. The servant bows and departs. The young noble listens as the two pairs of light footsteps make their way up the stairs, and the servant appears with the investigator in tow. Corrin enters and bows stiffly, those same cold eyes of his glare fixed on Alistair, and it reminds him too much of Cheryl's own eyes. He offers the investigator a seat, but he waves off his offer. No need, Lord Alistair. I will not be long. Alistair dismisses his servant with a casual wave of his hand before turning to Corrin. Welcome, investigator. How goes the investigation? He asks with a hint of mockery. We have found nothing yet that is inconsistent with your story. Neither sign of magic nor toxin is found. As I have told you once before, yes, I am aware, Lord Alistair, but it is my job to be thorough. That is all. Right, and I respect the effort you are putting into investigating my father's death. Corrin seemingly ignores Alistair's compliment and continues. I received a notice from the cardinals that you plan to be leaving Idris. Indeed, I plan to help Father Decorus in the capital. I see. How very noble of you, Alistair. Thank you, Lord, and thank you, investigator. So why have you come to visit me at my estate? I wish to inform you before you leave that you are cleared of any wrongdoing. Thank you, investigator. I am glad you believe me. What I believe has nothing to do with it. It is that I have found no proof that contradicts your claims. Alistair nods silently, keeping a grim look to meet Corin's cold expression as he replies, Regardless, thank you for being thorough, investigator. You are welcome, Lord Alistair. I will inform you if I have found anything else, or if I have any additional questions. The young noble pushes himself off his seat and offers his hand to the investigator. Corin takes it, and Alistair immediately regrets doing so as his skin feels as cold as his stare. The two men hold their handshake for a brief moment, but that short moment to Alistair feels so long as he meets Corin's piercing gaze. The young noble cannot determine whether the investigator is truly crushing his hand or if his nerves are getting the better of him, but when he finally breaks free, he feels relieved as he hides his trembling hand behind his back. Take care, investigator. Alistair gives him a final farewell as Corin nods and silently exits his study. He stands there with legs frozen, waiting for the sound of the door slamming shut, and when he hears it, he drops like a rock into his chair, breaking out in a cold sweat. The young noble rubs his face with his hands as he lets out a breath with too much air for his lungs. Despite hearing the good news, he feels as anxious as he did before, like this is a reprieve rather than a release. His trembling hand reaches for the bottle inside one of the drawers, and he opens it, dousing all of its contents into his mouth.